What a wonderful guest I have here today. A very special friend, brother, guest, colleague, warrior sage. This is Monte Lee-Wen. Monty and I, we go back, wait, maybe even close to almost getting close to what, 2 decades almost, Monty?
Getting close to 20 years.
That's,
Absolutely.
that's incredible. And I've invited Monty to be with us today, Warrior Sages, because Monty has an incredible story from, if you will, rags to riches, himself and his wife, but not just the success that he's had in business. It's the depth of his being, the incredible challenges you've overcome, and you continue to be this incredible example of passion, a person who lives his talk, walks his talk, a man of great clarity and power. And at the same time, you have this humbleness and a huge heart to serve people. Your family has expanded recently. So I'm just so thrilled to share you with our community because you've been a warrior sage for all these years. So everyone, let's welcome Monte Lee-Wen. Thanks, Monty, for being here with us.
Well, thank you, Satyen. You're too kind.
Monty, let's share, I know a lot about your story because we've been working together. Everyone, I've been a mentor to Monty for many years and his wife and family and teams and companies. But let's hear a little bit about your story, where you started from and where you're at today. I know that's a big story, but let's just jump right in.
Yeah, so where I'm at today, I'll start with a little bit of where I'm at today. I live in Texas now. I grew up in Canada, actually, Vancouver, British Columbia. Grew up in Surrey, not too far from you.
That's
and
right.
we were kind of a poor family. My parents worked very hard. When I was very young, my father was going to school and he was working at like a fish processing center, right? And he wasn't making much money, so we were fairly poor. So I had to struggle through life, through semblance of being poor, but as well as I was mixed race. My father's from Trinidad. He's African, Chinese. My mother is Native American and Caucasian. So I'm pretty mixed, and we have family all over the world, in the Dominican Republic and Trinidad and everywhere else, just kind of all over the place. So we grew up in a time, growing up in the 70s and 80s was a time when there was not a lot of acceptance of a interracial marriage, of and of being mixed race. So frankly, growing up was really tough. We were fairly disadvantaged in our community, even in my parents' church community. We were kind of looked down on as a family. So we didn't have a lot of opportunity growing up, which was good in a way because it really helped shape my brothers and I to have a bigger vision and desire to kind of break out of being poor. But in addition to that, we had some real big challenges in our childhoods, my brothers and I, and we had to fight through just tremendous adversity, including abuse, and grew up in an area where drugs were pretty rampant. And I remember as a teenager just being at a friend's apartment, and they were taking a dead body out of an apartment, someone who had overdosed on heroin. So that's the kind of community we grew up in. It's fairly challenging, and I ended up having to homeschool myself through my last couple of years of high school. Dropped out because my school was just gang infested and there was many problems, and I got in a lot of trouble. I actually, when I was 13, I got sent away to live on a farm because I joined a youth gang and I was doing all sorts of bad things and stealing cars and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. Just a really bad kid, and I had to turn myself around. And I ended up homeschooling myself through like the last 2 years of high school. And when I graduated, I barely graduated, in the sense I was kind of missing a credit, but I actually graduated with straight A's, but I was missing a credit. So I didn't actually graduate high school. And
Really?
nobody actually knows that, except for now. Everyone knows that now. It's just not a big deal anymore because I'm successful and it doesn't matter. But I didn't actually graduate high school because I was missing a credit. And I never completed it. So I ended up moving to Alberta with my mother, went to college as an adult, took some college courses, and then ended up moving back to Vancouver. And I ended up having to work and go to school at the same time. And I injured myself. I actually injured my back really badly working at a warehouse. And so I'm kind of telling you a story leading up to
Yes.
what made me get on this entrepreneurial path. And I injured my back really badly. And then I got broke and just couldn't work anymore and was trying to go to school and had all these student loans and debts and stuff like that. And it just became a problem because in Vancouver at that time, this is, mid 90s, unemployment rate was fairly high. It was hard to find work. My father took me to see a friend of his who was pretty wealthy. And I was hoping he was going to bail me out, give me some money, maybe give me a job. And instead, he sat me down and he said, "What are you good at?" And so we talked for a while because I was taking computer science, and he helped me like understand, where my talents are, and maybe I should start a business. So I left that 2-hour meeting with just a crash course on entrepreneurship and started my first business literally the day after, building a computer services company from nothing, right out of my apartment, right? And I actually built that company very aggressively and ended up with lots of clients and customers, and I was able to put myself through school, and it was wildly successful, for a young person. I started that company when I was 19 years old.
Wow,
First
fantastic.
company, yeah. So that's where I started my entrepreneurial path. Is at 19, and
So
I built this company up.
what was the distinction between the mindset right there of someone working? Like, what was that magic turn that happened in those 2 hours that made you go, okay, I can do this myself? I'm curious about that.
It was almost like he gave me permission to do it. I had no idea that I could go do something like that. No one had ever told me. I never had an example of entrepreneurship where I could go out and build something. I'm like, I'm 19. I'm just a dumb kid. I don't know anything. I can actually go start a company. And it was like he gave me permission and just kind of opened a door that I
Yeah.
didn't know was there to these possibilities of and be able to dream. Because I always had aspirations, but it was always down the traditional path because my father wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer or something. Asian parents always want you to be successful in a profession. But this was the first time that someone ever talked to me about being a business owner. And I always thought I had that mindset that, oh, well, you had to have money to make money, right? You can't just start a business out of nothing. I've started 2 businesses out of nothing. My first business and the business that retired me at the age of 43. I'm 44 now. And both of those, I pretty much started from scratch with nothing. And I started, really when I entered the real estate business, which is what I do now, I didn't know anything about real estate. I had to teach myself from the ground up. So that company was very successful. It put me through college and, paid all my bills. I was able to exit that business very successfully. And I moved down to the United States. I actually met my wife and moved to the States. And I ended up working for tech startup companies when I got to Seattle. So I moved to Seattle from Vancouver and started working for tech startup companies. And I realized really fast that, you know what, I don't want to work for anybody because, I've worked for several years by myself, or I had employees, when I with that company, but I worked for myself. I didn't have to be told what to do, where to go. I didn't have to ask permission to go on vacation when I can see my family, to take time off. I liked the freedom of being an entrepreneur. So freedom became a huge driving factor for me.
Yeah.
So basically, I ended up making a decision that I was going to start another business. And I took time to figure that out. Actually, I started reading books. I started looking at different other types of business opportunities. I didn't want to do tech. Tech was what I knew, but I was kind of burned out from it. And I also saw the model, right? You've got to raise money. There's a lot of R&D. You've got to give away lots of your company to investors and those sort of things. And you give up a lot of control. And I saw a lot of CEOs and founders have to give up control of their company. And I saw founders get ousted by their board after they brought in a venture capital firm in. They just get kicked out and sent out the door. And that's not what I wanted. So I was looking for something that would help me make and build wealth quickly, build a lot of cash flow, build a big balance sheet, because I started realizing that, cash flow is important, but really real wealth is on the balance sheet, right? It's net worth, it's assets, and assets that are income producing or assets that appreciate over time and create value. So I wanted to develop a business that was going to create a balance sheet for me and be able to grow exponentially over time. So did a lot of work, finding mentors, and encountered you, and you became an important mentor of mine. I think I'd already started my business when we had met. but I had to basically build this business from the ground up, and I realized that real estate was going to be, the best source of that. Real estate is the oldest wealth creation vehicle in the world. It's the oldest, most tried, most proven, and if you do it right, you can make a tremendous amount of money. And I specifically went into apartments in these large kind of deals and raised capital to buy these deals with partners and run them and operate them for carried interest. And that's basically how I built my business from the ground up. And it just became a cookie cutter methodology that I used over and over and over again. And I've bought over $1.5 billion worth of real estate since I started this business back in 2002. So, long story short, it's been a tremendous journey from where I started from these humble beginnings to where I am today. When I was young, I thought $1,000 was a lot of money. When I ran my first business, I thought $10,000 was a lot of money. And my financial thermostat kept raising and growing. And now everything we do is in like the tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions in stuff that we deal with. So I think, tremendously big now. But, along the way, the journey's hard. Went through a lot of tough times, went through the big recession.
Yeah, you went through the recession.
And
you also went through some challenging health, challenges.
Absolutely.
I know you're humble about this, but I'd love you to share, some of these challenges, but also get to the heart of how you approach those challenges. Because I saw you never collapsed. You continued to stay on top. You continue to stay present in the midst of everything. And I saw you doing that. It was really remarkable. I'd love you to share about that because many folks are going through.
Just when you think that things are going great, life, swings at you and teaches you a lesson that's, stretches and grows you. I really look at my health issues that I encountered as a growth opportunity to help me grow to the next level. It was challenging. When I started my business, it was really important for me to have a purpose and a vision that was so much greater than myself, but also something that was so personal and important to me that I had a drive that would take me through any sort of adversity that I was going to encounter. That drive became so powerful that no matter what I encountered, I did everything I could to press through it and succeed. So in 2008, right, kind of at the worst time, we're going into this big recession. I'm actually working on the biggest deal of my career. I'm buying a $40 million portfolio of real estate at this point. And the markets had collapsed around me. I'd lost my equity partner. I'm having to raise all the money from the ground up, literally $100,000 to $200,000 at a time. I ended up with, raising, all the money. I had to raise $10 million and ended up with 45 investors. And I had to raise it in the worst economy, right? It's like 2008. The funny thing is when we put this deal under contract, Lehman Brothers was supposed to be our equity partner. Well, everyone knows what happened to Lehman Brothers. They just evaporated. They collapsed and disappeared, went bankrupt and split up by the government. Their assets were all sold off by the government. And so they kind of went away. So I had this deal under contract. I put up more than $250,000 of my own money as hard-earned money, right? It was non-refundable, right? After my due diligence. And I couldn't get that back. So now I've got $250,000 on the line. And I've got to deal with no equity and no debt because the debt markets fell apart. So I got to go find a mortgage. And I needed a $30 million mortgage, and I raised $10 million of equity in 2008. And this is like the worst possible time. So that itself was a struggle. And we were just, I was just persevered through it, and we eventually got the deal closed. But the deal closed in August of 2008. In June of 2008, I'm a big martial arts guy. So I was sparring with someone and they kicked me in the face. I got my nose broken, went to go see a doctor. And he's feeling around in my neck and he finds this lump and he goes, we got to get you in for a CT scan because there's something odd in your neck. And I've got this, it turns out I have this massive mass. So he wants to rush me into surgery because he goes, I think you have aggressive lymphoma. And if we don't get you into surgery, your life's on the line. So I had about 4 days to contemplate my mortality before I went into the hospital. And the deal hasn't closed yet, right? This is June. Wow. Deal doesn't close till August. And, I get into surgery. I wake up after surgery, I can't talk. And doctor said, I think I got the whole tumor. Turned out to be non-cancerous. It was like I won the lottery. It's this very rare nerve sheath tumor called a schwannoma. It was hanging out on a nerve and wrapped around a bunch of nerves in my neck. And he was able to save all the nerves except for one. And he didn't realize he didn't save it, but he'd severed the nerve to my right vocal cord, removing the tumor. So when I woke up, I had a paralyzed vocal cord and I wasn't able to speak. He didn't realize it right away until the pathology report came back and said there was a large nerve attached to the tumor. And it turned out that part of that nerve was still kind of attached and he had severed it. And I didn't think I was ever going to be able to speak again. And when you have a paralyzed vocal cord, it's kind of an interesting situation because your vocal cords create a seal over your lungs. And when one is open, you no longer have that seal. So I'm constantly leaking oxygen, right? So which means I can't breathe properly. I can't talk. If I drink water, it goes straight into my lungs half the time. If I eat food, it goes straight into my lungs. Ended up in the emergency room multiple times, aspirating on food or Tylenol or whatever. And I ended up having to have another surgery where they put an implant in. I still have a paralyzed vocal cord, but they had to put an implant in and move my vocal cord over. So I have one paralyzed vocal cord that's now in the closed position, and the other one closes and vibrates against it. So that was the only way I could talk. But I have a very different voice now than I had pre-surgery. But it also took me 2 years of voice therapy to get my voice back to a point where I could even talk for any significant length of time. So I had to close this deal, biggest deal in my career at that point, unable to speak, right? Completely unable to talk. And here I am, I'm closing investors, I'm negotiating. Good thing I have employees, I have a team. I then had to learn to delegate everything and trust other people to do things for me. Even as small as going to a restaurant, having my daughter ask for a table, and she was very young, right? So it was a tremendous difficulty for me to overcome. And I was also a public speaker at the time. I was speaking all over the country at this time because my business had really taken off. And that kind of shut down the public speaking career for several years, right? It was tough. But then, I ended up with more problems. I ended up with an autoimmune disease in 2009. I got really stressed out and triggered an autoimmune disease that just took me to my knees. Employees never knew that I even actually had to get a disability thing from, my doctor prescribed me a disability thing for my car. Never used it because I was too proud to give into the disease. And I eventually was able to get on medications that have controlled the disease, and I'm in pretty good shape now. But for several years, it was very, very difficult. And all those years, I was the CEO of the company, building the company, and I never let anyone know. And there were times that I could barely walk, but I still made my way to the office, sat in my office all day, and made my way home. When everyone left, I'd, try to get out of the office and back to my car and take myself home. So it was very, very difficult, tremendous adversity. But I'll tell you, probably the best growth experience of my life. Forced me to be a better leader, forced me to pick my words when I talk, because when you can't talk very long,
Yes.
you better say what you got to say.
Yes.
As succinctly and clear as possible, right? So I learned to listen, because before that, I could never listen to people. My mind was always moving 100 miles a minute, and people are talking, and my brain's just going, and I had to learn to slow down and listen to people, and then choose my words very carefully, and it really helped me become a better leader. And very actually thankful for that experience, because I don't think I would be the person I am today with the leadership abilities I have today without that experience.
That's incredible, Monte. We all go through challenges, outside oriented, internally oriented, but the way that you approached it, it's this attitude that you're not going to succumb to the things that come to your doorstep. You're going to utilize them. You're going to find advantage in them. You're going to rebound off them. You're going to keep your clear sight, your clear vision, your clear goal, your clear energy and intent. This is what you've been doing for years now. So tell us where you're at now. What's going on now? I mean, we've had an amazing transformation in your company in the last couple of years, and then the personal freedom you've attained. I'd love to share about that.
Yeah, we got to go a place where the company was, moving to this next level of real institutional platform. And I realized at the time my own limitations. And I also realized that, kind of my purpose was always bigger than my company. My company has been a vehicle for me to reach my vision. But my business isn't my vision. It's merely a vehicle to achieve all these wonderful things that I wanted for my life. So it came to a point where I realized there was a new phase for me, and it was time to move on and go to the next phase of my vision, and hand it off to somebody else. And also at the time, we had gone through some major changes in the company. We had, closed on a lot of deals, but I also really knew that the business needed to transform and become less, fly by the seat of the pants entrepreneurial as I drove the business. And it was becoming definitely less that way. We had a lot of systems and we had a COO and all that sort of stuff, but I needed someone to really focus on building the company to a more institutional level. And what I realized is I could do that, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to do it. It's a lot of work. And I realized it was going to be a lot of work. As 43 and, realized that just, the time had come for me to kind of hand off. And I had this incredible CEO that worked for one of our subsidiary companies. And I know he's a student of yours now, Yen Young. And he'd worked with me for several years under me, and he was basically a CEO of our capital markets company. And I really felt that he was the person that I needed to hand it to, because I learned that Yen was a man of integrity. He'd been with me for 4 years. I saw his work ethic, very successful, very brilliant leader, and brilliant entrepreneur. And it just became he was the right person on the right time. And he was happy to step in and take the reins. And it's been an incredible journey since, not just with him running the business and building something, great from what I've entrusted with him and taking it to a new level. That's been phenomenal. But also giving me this time to step back, be a dad for a while. My wife and I went and adopted a child from China. We adopted him when he was 8. He's 9 now, so we adopted him a year ago. And it's been pretty incredible to be able to take that step back and really kind of live life and being a parent, because for a long time, working and grinding hard in the company, as well as being sick for many years, I feel like I missed a lot of my kids' lives. I have a daughter that's 20, turning 21 in March. My son's turning 15 in November. And, we still have our little one, our 9-year-old, but they're growing up so fast. So for me, it was just nice to step back, and now I spend my time traveling. The great thing is I get to invest in other companies and sit on the board of other businesses or nonprofits and really help other people's visions and help other people where they're trying to go and make a difference in the world. So that's been very exciting for me.
That's amazing. So it's not just about working, grinding, moving forward, grinding even more. There's an opportunity of delegation when it's time to exit and go to your next role, and also put in the right people to allow the dream, to allow all that you've created to flourish. Absolutely. I'd love to hear from you. You've been in business all these years in many ways. I'd love to hear from you. What is an entrepreneur? What is the essence of entrepreneurship for you? What does that mean to you?
For me, being an entrepreneur is going out in the world and creating something, right? Adding value in the world that people are willing to pay for, right? Or willing to dedicate time for. I like the idea of being able to create value that other people find valuable enough that they're willing to pay for it. And so there's this relationship between myself and my customers or my clients or my investors, where I'm doing something great for them. And in return, it helps build my dreams as well, right? And so I've always cared deeply about, my customers and my investors. I feel like every dollar they've entrusted to me, I treat like my own, because, number one, they're giving me money that's been hard earned for them, but at the same time, you know, they're entrusting me with this, but this is really helping me build my dreams too. So it becomes very important to me. I see entrepreneurship as bigger than just myself, right? It's that idea of creating value in the world, whether it's in the marketplace or, being an entrepreneur can also be in nonprofits of going out there and creating something that makes a difference. But for me, that's what really entrepreneurship is making a difference and really helping build your dreams by doing it.
Thank you, Monte. Let's go to the heart of the fire that's happening right now in America, but really affecting the whole world, right? We've got the election right now that's happening, the uncertainty in that. You had made a response in one of the posts that was very inflaming, and you asked me, "Hey, are you willing for me to cut loose, Monte? I want you to cut loose. This is the WarriorSage family. This is our family. I want to know what's your thoughts on politics and self-determination, because I know they go hand to hand in your own sense."
Yeah, I consider myself somewhat of an economist. I've traveled around the world and I've spoken to some of the wealthiest families in the world. I get invited to speak at big events or small events with some of the world's elite. So I spend a lot of time, reading and getting data, gathering data from the economy or from politics or the news, and try and put that in perspective and how that's going to affect, the economy, how that's going to affect investments, especially how that's going to affect real estate investments or capital markets or lending. So all those things I pay a lot of attention to. So I have a very different perspective than some people may have. And sometimes my opinions can rub people the wrong way because I come from a very raw perspective. I try to tear down the illusions and speak truth and reality, right? And some people don't like to hear reality, right? Sometimes it's polarizing for them to hear things that go against their what they might believe to be true. But unfortunately, we live in a world where there's a lot of data and there's a lot of propaganda and there's a lot of illusions that we create for ourselves, but that other entities are out there creating to blind people to the reality and to truth. Politics is an interesting thing in America. Obviously, we're in a very contentious election that still hasn't been settled, and it may not be settled for a few more days or even weeks if it goes to litigation. Hopefully, everyone can just breathe, relax, because we're in for a little ride. But at the end of the day, listen, presidents come and go, and we've survived numerous presidents, no matter how good or how bad they were. So it's another 4 years of whoever, whether it's Donald Trump or it's Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. For me, I live at a place where it doesn't matter so much anymore because I try not to let them control my life. I'm going to do what I do, irregardless of who's in power. I might change my strategies, and I might do things a little different and play a little smarter and play chess a little differently. But at the end of the day, they're going to be out of office, and I'm still going to be around doing the same thing. So I try not to let it, worry me too much. But we are at a place in America where we do have a problem. We have a big problem, right? And this election is not going to solve those problems. And as much as people hope that an election is going to solve our problems as a society, they're not, because governments don't really solve our problems. They never have, they never really will. And a lot of times they meddle and make things worse. As a civilization, it's up to us to really, in our own little worlds, our own communities, and our own spheres of influence, that's how we change our world. But we do have a major problem. And, I will say about the election, I think, my prediction, I think it's likely a Biden win. I think there's going to be some benefits where the Democrats won't get the Senate and there will be opposition, which I think is a good thing because that means there's gridlock and there's not a lot that the government can do. And that's a good thing, especially when you're coming out of a recession. A lot of times you just got to let the market settle itself out. Government intervention in recessions can play very poorly and prolong recessions and make them much more painful.
Really?
So actually having the Senate gridlock the government means there won't be any new tax increases. There probably won't be massive increases in regulation. It'll let the market kind of sort itself out. So that's kind of a good thing. The stock market doesn't like uncertainty. They don't like dramatic changes. They kind of likes gridlock. It likes kind of status quo. It likes some calmness and some predictability. Problem is when you have people that come into power that have radical agendas, whether it's on the right or on the left, it spooks markets because it creates uncertainty, right? Markets are never really, they don't really know what to, where to go, or, do we sit on the sidelines? Do we invest money? How do we do things? Like this whole election cycle this year has been really devastating for some of the capital markets because a lot of people have just kind of sat on the sidelines, not deploying capital and building liquidity because they're too scared of where to put it because they don't know where to put it because it's too uncertain. And when you have uncertainty, it spooks the markets and it prevents investment into places that need investment. So I think when we get uncertainty out of the picture, you'll see a lot more investment flow, and investment's a good thing, right? Investments is, money going into something that helps it grow or helps it improve. So I do think that it's not the end of the world on either side, right? Wherever this goes, you'll get out from underneath a very fiery personality into someone who's pretty docile, frankly, and you'll have a Senate that's run by the opposition. Not really a bad thing. So it's not going to be the end of the world. So no matter what side you live on. But I'll go back to the problem that we have in America.
Yes.
The problem we have in America is every aspect of our life has become politicized. And every aspect of our lives has become politicized. We are extremely polarized as a society to the point where people are cutting off friends because they have different opinions and different beliefs or support a different candidate. They're cutting off family members because, well, you didn't vote for Joe Biden, or you voted for Trump, or, you voted for Joe Biden. And we've come to a point where we've become so partisan that we no longer hear each other, right? We've become deaf and blind. And we're walking around bumping into each other, and we're really creating an environment that's hostile, right? We're seeing violence, we're seeing talks of civil war, runs on guns, and people are afraid, people are shooting each other, and they're shooting each other because of opinions and beliefs. And whatever happened to public discourse, public debate? And I think we've lost that. People have stopped thinking for themselves. They now toe these partisan lines blindly. And it's causing hatred. It's causing partisan militancy. And frankly, the death of free speech. Free speech is going away. We no longer debate in America. Instead, we cancel each other out. We shut each other down for having different opinions. And that is extremely dangerous and it's turning the country into this powder keg, right? Everyone's worried about riots and violence and civil war. Like, do you really want to shoot your neighbor? Do you really want to kill your brother, right? Whether it's a literal brother or it's the brother down the road. And that kind of talk is horrific. And I do put a lot of blame. There's blame on both sides, okay? But where we're seeing a lot of this cancel culture is coming out on kind of the left side of the aisle pretty heavily. And there's a lot of people on the left that also agree to me. And I'm more of a libertarian, classical liberal, and not this kind of neo-progressivism, which is what we have today. If you hear from Noam Chomsky, who's a very big, person on the left, a very big intellectual on the left, he's talking about how this cancel culture is dangerous. And it has created this big problem where the left has kind of moved hard and radical and embraced an agenda that they want to radically remake the rest of the country. Well, the problem is half the country doesn't want that. And you can't just shove, certain ideas down the rest of the country's throat. You've got to come together and debate. My biggest concern is that this classical liberalism is dying, and it's being replaced by this neo-progressivism. that looks nothing like classical liberalism. Like classical liberalism is based on ideas, progress, debate. It's embracing differences of opinion, different perspectives. Neoprogressivism that we're seeing today demands a homogenous thinking, right? They no longer respect disagreement, and it's politically isolating, right? People are politically and ideologically isolating themselves. Classical liberalism understands that ideas are powerful. And the best way to prove the strength and validity of an idea is to test it against others, right? So if you're no longer willing to test ideas, to debate, we end up in this homogenous thinking that's going to take us down a path where no one new ideas, and we can't challenge the ideas that we are holding as beliefs now, that this is what's true and this is what we must do. Well, how do you know that if you don't test it? How do you know that if you don't challenge it? And the problem is we do not allow ourselves to challenge anymore. And it's taking us down a very dark path. And this is also happening on the right. Like the forms are different, but it's happening in both places. And it's shutting down conversation. It's shutting down debate. But it's also marching us towards this authoritarian system. And this partisan political ideology is moving into a place that is not progressive anymore. It's regressive. And that's what concerns me, is that we've lost our way. Like classical liberalism has been this force for good since Socrates. It's what has changed the world. It's what has allowed people to challenge ideas like the earth was flat, or that that the solar system revolves around the earth. We were able to challenge ideas, and that was the foundation of classical liberalism. But we've lost that way, and that's a problem. And I think we're going to march ourselves into this society where everyone has to think the same thing, out of fear of being shut down or even violence. And that's what you see in dictatorships and these authoritarian Marxist systems that came out of the 19th and 20th century. And that worries me. We've got to take a step back and kind of move ourselves back and come off the ledge as a society. So I'm very concerned that that's where we are as a society, but more and more people need to really wake up and see that it's not okay to have this homogenous thinking. It's also not okay to say, well, you can't leave my party. I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat and you can't leave the plantation. That's a very wrong kind of thinking. And I saw that, one of the things that Joe Biden made a very big mistake was saying is that, you're not Black if you don't vote for me. Like, what is that telling people? It's like, I can't, if you're an African American, you can't think for yourself. And if you think for yourself outside of this partisan ideology, you're now an enemy, or you're now not Black enough. Those kind of things are dangerous in society. And that's what's happening on both sides. And it's quite frankly frightening. And that's what scares me most about the state of the country. And I don't necessarily have all the answers of how to walk back from that. But people are going to have to, especially leaders and people with influence, are going to have to realize that this is a dangerous mode of operating and help bring people back from that ledge before we jump off of it and end up in some failed authoritarian system that's not going to take us where we really want to go as a nation.
Thank you, Monte. You've been a leader of your company. You've seen many leaders. We've just chatted about forms of leadership, the strengths and weakness. What are some of your ideal values in leadership? Who are the top leaders in history that you aspire to or that you look up to? What type of leaders should we become now moving forward in society?
Leadership is probably my favorite topic, because I believe that everything rises and falls on leadership. Right? You're either going to be successful or you're going to be unsuccessful based on your ability to lead. Right? And I do believe that there's a lid on your ability to succeed if your leadership doesn't continue to evolve and grow. Leadership for me comes down to one essence, and that is influence. Leadership is influence, right? It's the ability to influence people to work towards a common vision, or work towards your vision or your ideas, to bring people together. And I value this style of servant leadership, where it's not all about necessarily you, it's about them, right? And I've been very good about, I realized a long time ago that fame for me was never important. I didn't care about the glory. I would rather someone else have it. Didn't care about that at all. And because I didn't care about that, I did a very good job of allowing other people to take the accolades and bask in the success of their achievements. And I realized by doing that it really empowered people, and it gave them ownership over their success. And it made them feel good about themselves and about what they're doing. So I created this intention to really help empower and elevate people and serve them in a way that I know that if I serve them and I help them achieve their greatest potential, or them to be empowered, that the vision we were all going after would be achieved. Yes. Right? So it's a very different perspective of leadership. I think the old styles of leadership, I completely reject. I reject any sort of positional leadership. Well, just because I have a title, I must be the leader. I completely reject those philosophies. Just because someone has a title doesn't mean they're a leader. You can always tell the leader in the room whether they have a title or not. I do a lot of negotiations, and I always look for who has the influence in the room. And a lot of times it's not the designated leader, right? The person who's ought to be or supposed to be because of their title. I seek to influence those that can influence, right? The other parties. That's why leadership is so much about influence. That's why negotiation is about influence. It's all about influence. But there are some incredible leaders in history. And I like to point out, one, that all these leaders were human beings, and all of them were imperfect. And all of them were fallible. All of them made tremendous mistakes, and all of them probably made stupid mistakes. And the fact about achieving is you're going to make more mistakes than successes, right? You fail your way to success. It's failing forward, right? You fail, you learn, you do better next time, right? And you've got all these peaks and valleys you got to go through before you get to a level of success. And even when you're successful, it doesn't end, right? There's always growth, and there's always going to be failure. Failure is actually a good thing. It's springboard to success. So, but what I've learned about leaders is, the ones that have learned from their failures and embraced failure are some of the best leaders out there. But it's funny how, you can point out leaders and sometimes be, well, how are they a good leader? They did all this bad stuff. Well, just because they did stupid things in their life didn't mean they were a good leader when things came down to it. A lot of the leaders that I really like are, and that I've read a lot about, are military leaders. Patton, MacArthur, Colin Powell. He's had great leadership in his career, and his political career was maybe a little different than his military career. I'd like to look back to history, for a lot of great leaders, and people I like, Andrew Carnegie, a person who put philanthropy as such an important part of his legacy. I love that because he did so much about giving back. But was he fallible? Did he make mistakes? Absolutely. I think Steve Jobs is another great leader, I wouldn't say he's a great rounded leader, but from a visionary perspective, phenomenal visionary leader. Was he good all the time with people? No, he wasn't. Was he a good operational leader sometimes? Absolutely not. That's why they kicked him out once, and then he ended up coming back. But he was an incredible visionary, right? And vision is an important quality of a leader, is to have that kind of vision. Abraham Lincoln, incredible leader, being able to, heal a country after Civil War and do Reconstruction in the South. And not only that, you see it through to fight and end slavery in this country. Harriet Tubman, amazing woman who was a slave herself and would go and do these incredible raids to, into the deep south to save her people and bring them back to the north so they could be free. The history is full of so many rich and powerful leaders if we just go and look for them and read about their lives. But those are some, off the top of my head, those are some incredible people that made a difference, right? Winston Churchill, FDR, right? Like these wartime presidents or prime minister in the UK who, talk about a arrogant man, Winston Churchill. You want to read his biography. He was arrogant, he was loud, he was crass. There was so many bad things about his personality, but he was a great wartime leader. He was able to pull the country together and take them through the hardship and help win the war. It's incredible.
Thank you, Monte. Absolutely. All of those are very exceptional, profound leaders. As you shared, we have many dark elements, unconscious elements that actually drive us to become a leader. Unmet needs when we were younger, which propel us to meet those needs later in life. We didn't feel worthy enough. We didn't feel loved or acknowledged enough. And that lack within us drives us to grow, attain, overcome these things. So I've always shared with all the leaders that I'm working with and, I'm blessed to coach, is that all the shit that we've got in our life is fertilizer. The old saying, if you pile it up in one spot, it stinks. If you spread it around, it becomes fertilizer. And so the principle of advantage, can I take advantage of whatever comes my way? I think this is one of the foundational entrepreneurial principles or energies that we have within ourselves, no matter what's going on. There's another aspect of your entrepreneurship journey that I really value. I really love this about you, is your love of your family. You have such a beautiful family, your wife, your children, and how you are with them, how they are with you. Many entrepreneurs, we fall off this care and love and giving the value and the time and the energy and the dedication to our families because our business takes over. But somehow you've managed to really keep flooding your family with so much love so they feel just as secure. I'd love you to share more about how to have a healthy family life, have a healthy relationship in the midst of growing, billion-dollar businesses.
Yeah, that's it's interesting because a lot of people think that to build a business successfully, you've got to burn the candle at both ends, right? And that's not true. Actually, it's a false idea of building a business, and actually it's a terrible way to build a business because we can only do that for so long before we burn out or we destroy our families. One of my, as I said before, my business was a vehicle to a greater purpose, to a life vision that I developed a long time ago. Part of that life vision was having a wonderful family that was happy. Part of that vision was being an incredible father and in being an incredible husband. So if my business is a vehicle to this greater purpose, I can't let the business get in the way of this purpose, right? The vehicle can never run over the purpose and destroy the purpose. It always has to serve that vision. So for me early on, I made a decision to live my life by a certain set of rules. One being, I leave work at a certain time every day and I call it quits. And when I walk in the door for my family, work stays at the door. Now, my wife and I worked together in our business, from almost the beginning. She kind of joined a little later. She had her own business going and she joined a little later. And working together in the business can be challenging because now you have to have a set of rules to make sure that any difficult energy or negative energy that might be in the business does not transfer to home. So we had to make a rule that no matter what we're feeling from business, no matter what our opposition might be to another person's decisions, that gets left at the door. And if you want to talk about it, you got to set an appointment during business hours to sort out the business issues. But you never let the business permeate the personal life. And when you're in business, I wear a CEO hat, she wore a CFO hat, and she's an accountant. And we worked from those hats in our respective roles. And I always treated her professionally as if she was not my wife and a CFO that I hired. And she would treat me the same as if I was a CEO. So when we were at work, it's like we weren't married, right? We did not let our personal life get into the workplace. So we never fought in front of our employees or had arguments in front of our employees. It was always business. And the business got left at the door when we came home. And no matter how we felt in that car, the minute we walked in that home with our children, we're family, right? And that's how we were able to keep a loving, harmonious family. And I've always put my family first before the business. And I also learned a long time ago that, there was a part of me when I first started the business, before I kind of figured this out, I would let people call me. And, we'd be sitting at dinner and someone would call my phone. Oh, it's an investor. I better get on the phone with them, walk away for an hour talking on the phone. And not only was that harmful for my family, it also showed my children a dysfunctional way of operating a business. But at the same time, I realized that people weren't really appreciating my time. My time had no value. And if my time had no value, people saw me as having less value. And if people see me as having less value, there's no way they're going to invest with me if I'm going to just not function in my life in a way where I don't even value my own time. And when I realized that, I changed my way of operating. And I actually realized that people respected me more. They valued my time more. Instead of knowing I was going to pick up the phone and just sucking up my time, to be going, oh, I understand you're really busy. Can I get 5 minutes of your time? And I would say, sometimes I would say, I'll tell you what, why don't you call me at 9 a.m. tomorrow because I'm with my family. All right. Or maybe I wouldn't even take the call. I just let it go to voicemail and deal with it in the morning. So my whole way of operating changed, but also the response from my clients changed. They actually started to respect my time more and value my time. And if they were able to get my time, they felt honored to have my time. That was a very different perspective from what was happening prior to that, because people were just abusing my time. Even my employees were abusing my time. And I gained a lot more respect for myself, respect for my family, respect from everybody else around me when I changed that behavior.
Beautiful, beautiful. Oh, I commend you for that. This is such a valuable piece. We can be rich, but we won't be wealthy. We won't be fulfilled. We can have money, but when we have the spectrum of this heart fulfillment as well, that's what makes us a whole human.
There's a big difference between rich and wealth, right? And in a literal sense and in a figurative sense.
Yes.
It's very different. In a literal sense, rich can be a high income, not necessarily a balance sheet. Wealth is found on the balance sheet. Wealthy people have a big balance sheet. And that's what I've always endeavored to grow. And that's why the wealthy, no matter what happens, they don't fall because there's just too much that supports their income, their wealth. They're too big to fail, right? They have so many assets that a train wreck won't take them down. A big lawsuit's not going to take them down, right? This is not just about income. But also to live a wealthy life, it's to take care of all the other aspects of your life, not just your finances, your faith, your spirituality, your emotional state, your mental state, your family, your relationships. All those become, and your physical health, all those become tremendously important. And actually, I don't think you can truly become successful in a business or as an entrepreneur, like truly successful, without balancing those things in your life. When you're off balance, it's going to show up, and it's going to show up, especially at times when the worst times, right? It'll always show up in your life. So keeping that balanced life and really creating this harmony of balance is so important. You don't have to get everything done in a day. Consistency is what's most important, right? Even if it's a little bit here, as long as you're consistently moving the ball. That'll get you there before somebody who's burning the candle and hustling constantly and burning out. You will beat them. Hair in the tortoise. You will win that race.
Thank you. Monte, this has been such a rich share. Thank you so much for your generosity of your life experience to us Warrior Sages. To complete today, what's in your heart to share to our Warrior Sage community?
Don't get so caught up in all this craziness. Turn off the news. For the next week, turn it off and focus on the things that are really important to you, because you can't change the outcome of this election. There's nothing you can do. It's going to happen whether you can't sleep and tossing and turning at night, or you go and watch a movie, or you go and hang out with your friends. And nothing is going to be different. It's going to be the same, but you can be different. You can live a little more with less anxiety and less stress. This is a stressful thing. If you're just watching the news and living by every tweet and every social media post, it's going to be a roller coaster, and it's not worth it. It's not worth it, and it's exhausting. Focus on what matters in your life, and it'll all work out in the end for you, because that's what matters, is your life, your vision. These people don't matter. They're going to come and go. You're the common denominator in your life. They're not a common denominator at all. That's and really, don't be angry. If the results of the election don't go your way, don't be angry. Don't be angry at your neighbors. Don't be angry at your fellow Americans. Let it go. People can have their own beliefs and their own ideas. They're free to have that. So why judge them for it? We can still love each other and still be friends and family if we disagree. That's okay. Disagreement's a good thing. Disagreement is the catalyst for change. There is no change without friction and disagreements and debate. That is the catalyst for change. So embrace the fact that we have a country where we have different demographics, and people think different things and have different ideas and different cultures and different ways of doing things. Embrace that. I think it's a beautiful thing. And it's a great thing. And that's the only way as a country, if we can come together and talk about those differences and debate and maybe influence each other a little bit, and we'll do better as a company, as a country, we'll do way better as a country, and we'll be happier, and there'll be a lot less fighting. No more people need to die in the streets or be injured or be attacked or have their careers destroyed just because of their thoughts, beliefs, and opinions. That's not right. What we think up here in our mind is sacred. That's the only thing we get to truly have in this world that can't be taken away from us. It really is. No matter how much someone tortures us or abuses us, we still own our minds. And we can never move to a society where that changes, where we can no longer own our mind because there are consequences to a way of thinking. That'll take us to a very dark place. And that doesn't bode well for civilization if that's where we go. So allow everyone to be free. Allow them to have the sovereignty of their mind. That's truly what will make America great again. Slogans, all these political slogans or whatever, they're garbage. What makes America great is loving our neighbors and treating each other with respect and allowing each other to have differences and be able to come together because of those differences. That's what makes America great, not these politicians.
Monte, thank you so much for your heart, your care, sharing your journey. And I love you lots. Please pass my love to your whole family.
Thank you, pleasure.
Thank you, Warrior Sages, for receiving. There's a lot of richness in here. Rewind this, listen to it again, and up a level. What Monte was sharing is exactly what I'm aligned with right now. Let's be the center. Let's make everything great by becoming centered in our own self and embracing rather than rejecting. All right, Monte. Thank you.
Good night.